Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Going to start off first, foremost, Supreme Court. Yes, the U.S. Supreme Court, ideological to a fault. 5-4 decision today. They decided to lift a lower court ruling that would protect inmates from the coronavirus. Evidently, the lower court had said, hey, you need to clean the cells. You have some spacing. You need to do some inmate testing. You have to have some procedure, some thought put into how, someone arrested for, name the violation, name the crime, how it is that we don't end up getting them a death sentence. Lower courts seem to think that was sane. It was rational. Maybe we should try to protect the people that we're holding captive and away from society. Seemed like a great idea. Evidently, 5-4 conservatives said, nah, screw them. Let them all get the virus. Don't care. This is my view. Now, they didn't give an explanation for blocking the order while this is being pursued. They didn't give any reason. Sonia Sotomayor, one of the leftward-leaning justices, since I have to put it that way, she said that the district judge in this case concluded that the jail exposed its inmates to a significant risk from the highly contagious and potentially deadly disease. She added, yet this court now intervenes, leaving to its own devices a jail that has misrepresented its actions to the district court and failed to safeguard the health of the inmates in its care. And the 5 conservative justices, screw them. And I know, look, the rest of us are on our own too. And this is one of those moments where, wow, I don't care about them. For me, it's how you treat the least among us. There's that Christian value that I love that people throw at us. How you treat the least among you. And in a society, if we're going to, basically tell the elderly, too bad on you. If we're going to push a scenario where you're on your own and we're going to do nothing to help you, that's kind of screwy. But I guess not surprising in the world in which we live whatsoever. Not surprising at all. Also, you remember the hero stuff? You remember all of the, we care about our essential workers and, they're frontline heroes. You remember all of those things? You remember all of that nonsense that the corporate America was funneling us, and all these different PR firms were spinning the tales of, we gave a $2 an hour raise to our essential workforce to come in and make sure that they can fry up the burgers and pack the grocery bags. Remember that? Because these people had no choice but to expose themselves to a deadly virus and had no choice but to expose themselves and their families to getting sick. You remember that? Remember how we cared? And for a brief moment, our politicians were all on board. Oh boy, we care about our essential workers. That, my friends, long gone. Long gone. In fact, I look at what's going on in Seattle right now as we speak. There's a rally of transit workers who are saying, hey, you remember when you were saying that we were, frontline heroes and all of that stuff? And remember when we negotiated that contract that we, sat down and agreed to? How is it now you can come back and say, we're going to wipe out all of those raises and we're going to do some draconian cuts and all of this? How could you do that now? Especially when the transit workers were really the ones who got just slammed during the last wave. And it comes back to what I was saying all during that moment of, we care. Oh, you're essential. Oh, thank I'm surprised there wasn't a ribbon for an essential worker. I mean, it didn't go on long enough for someone to produce a ribbon and make a profit off of it, so that's why we didn't get it. But it's the BS rhetoric that came out of it, and it's not just happening to these transit workers. It's all across the country. You're seeing that little bit of incentive being pulled back. So any raise that happened during the pandemic, that first wave has already been clawed back. But you know what didn't happen? There wasn't a press release announcing it. There wasn't a press release saying, you know what, we decided, screw those workers. They're only worth minimum wage instead of the extra $2 that we gave them to come out during a global pandemic. Screw them. There's no PR spin for that. There's no industry out there really pushing the meme that corporate America is back to screwing workers. It's open season again. But this is where we are, and this situation is not surprising to me. Because you've had the Republican Party for my entire life being basically the pro-business, anti-worker party. They are the ones who whatever corporate tax cuts you need, whatever deregulation you need, we're there for you. Those workers want to raise, screw them. And we're in this moment where you've got the Republican-led Senate who absolutely, positively, without question, is going to do nothing to increase wages for workers. There's no way a minimum wage increase happens during a Republican administration, unless it's something that's just mildly pandering and nowhere near. Because if you remember, here in Pennsylvania, while everyone else was pushing for $15 an hour, we had a Republican state senator who goes, yeah, we can do a minimum wage increase, 8.25. It was like $1 over the next 5 years, just so they could say, hey, we raised the minimum wage, but they didn't really. So we look at what's going on in the Senate, and we're not moving forward. There's some talk that possibly by the end of the week there might be a relief bill, a stimulus bill coming out. I'm not holding my breath, because the one sticking issue, and this is the part that's just incredible to me, we've given corporate America huge amounts of money, $500 billion trough. All the little piggies have their snouts in it, and they're lining their stomachs with it. The sticking point from everybody inside these negotiations seems to be the increase in unemployment benefits, and it comes back to we're in this moment where you've got the Republicans who are saying, no, we want to force people back into desperation. We want to force them back into crummy jobs. We want to force them back into dangerous conditions, or we want to force them back into there's nothing out there. And the Democrats are saying, well, you know what? We need the demand in the economy. We need people not to lose their homes. We need people to be able to feed their kids. We need people to be able to function. And since you're not going to pass an extension of food stamp benefits, if you're not going to put a moratorium on evictions, if you're not going to do any of the things that need to be done to ensure that families don't literally go over a cliff, not just a figurative cliff, then this extra income has to be there to bring people back up to being whole. Because again, we can have this conversation a million times, and we have, that unemployment benefits replace about 40% in good states of your income, about 40%. And when you throw benefits in, like healthcare and pensions, it's pathetic. So this extra $600 was a way, and this is the weird part. This is the funny part. The funny part is this idea didn't come from Democrats. This idea came from, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, the spawn of Antonin Scalia. Our labor secretary, Eugene Scalia, who is, in my view, one of the worst labor secretaries, actually found something that was, hey, this is probably not a bad idea. And his rationale was about $600 brings people to full loss of wages. Even he gets it. So I turned to Tommy Tuberville. Most people don't know who Tommy Tuberville is, or it could be Tuberville. I was never an Auburn football fan, or Cincinnati football fan for that matter. But the former football coach, he came out yesterday, I believe it was, during an interview on Alabama's Morning News with TJ, and said that, you know what, the $600 is just way too much. Way, 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 way too much. It's making people lazy, just sitting around. Not to mention that there are no jobs out there. Never mind that. But I find it ironic that a guy who each of the last, 14 years has pocketed in excess right around $2 million a year to coach football, to exploit poor people's children for his economic gain. And we can have the argument about whether collegiate football is a ripoff for athletes or not, but I find it interesting that he's making more than $2 million a year coaching a game, while simultaneously saying that the person who has to work in those environments, getting an extra $600 in their unemployment, is somehow going to make them lazy, is somehow going to make them dependent. He was making $2 million from institutions where kids struggle to pay their tuition, where tuition rates have gone through the roof. This is a guy who made $2 million a year. He was a reasonable coach, I guess. He resigned a couple years ago, I guess it was. And as a going away present, they handed him $5.1 million. This is a guy who's saying, $600 a week is just out of control. Can't possibly do it. And my eyes kind of just flame at the hypocrisy and the idiocy that comes out of this. And I look at this and I go, could anyone possibly in Alabama vote for a guy so tone deaf? Because again, we're in this moment. 54 million people filed first-time unemployment claims. And I guarantee you, half of those people, I guarantee it, half of those people have never in their lives had to go through that. And this is one of those moments where this could possibly be the first moment in a good number of those people's lives that they've had to depend on a government program, that they've had to ask for help from our government, that the safety net was there for them. And the reaction that they're getting is that they're lazy and they're shiftless and all they want are handouts. I got to think that that's not going to play well. I got to think that the people who really need this and who, as of last week, are going, now what do I do? Because, look, I'm applying for jobs as often as I can. They're not there. I'm now getting half of what I was getting before. The standard of living for these folks is going to plummet. I got to think, running up to an election, this isn't a smart thing. And this, again, you could go, well, Tommy Tuberville is not just playing politics. He's got his thumb on the pulse of, I don't know what the hell. What he is, he's another one of those Republicans who is pushing for the kind of desperation that most working people are stuck with. You got to get up every day. You got to go to that job. You've got no voice. You've got no say. The boss is always hounded on top of you for dumb reason after dumb reason. And your only choice is to leave. But guess what? If you do leave, you quit, you go somewhere else, chances are that guy's going to be just as giant of an a-hole as the last guy was. And you have no recourse whatsoever. This is what I hear from people all the time. This is work life in America. And a lot of us, like, most people suffering from Stockholm Syndrome, you end up going, okay, I've just figured it out. I'm just going to keep my head down, take my beating, and, do what I have to do. Because guess what? I still have to pay the rent. I still have to pay the light bill. I still have to put food on the table. Kids still need shoes. Down the list. Without thinking that, maybe we're in a moment. Maybe we're in a moment where this kind of thinking can change. Maybe there's a second where we can go, you know what? What we're being spoon-fed, what we're being shoveled, it ain't right. And look, there's going to be another wave of this pandemic. It's coming. The numbers are going up. The the bad is rising. And there's talk of, there may be another shutdown. How many people are going to need that extra resource if it's you this time? If it's your job that shuts down? Because guess what? Without that demand, and if I have to put this into radical self-interest terms of, well, I didn't get any. Once the demand dries up, once nobody has money to buy stuff, once 54 million people fall off the cliff, they stop buying stuff. And when they stop buying stuff in a consumer-driven economy, guess what happens? Producers stop producing stuff, which is why we've seen a rash of press releases of company after company saying, oh, we're cutting half our workforce. We're cutting all these jobs. And because there's no demand. And at the end of the road, government is the last resort to increase that demand. And in this case, we're doing it by making sure that people don't lose their homes and their kids don't go hungry, which seems sane and rational to me. But again, we'll see what the GOP comes up with, because at this point, they're the ones who have all the power. Like in any relationship, it's the person who cares the least. It's the person holding the match and the gasoline willing to burn the house down who has the most power. And that right now is Mitch McConnell and the Republicans. And they've shown time and time again, they are willing to burn the house down. Love to hear your thoughts. Going to take a quick break. When we come back and talk a little bit about our healthcare system under siege and what's going to happen to those folks if we get past this, and we will, but what's going to happen to our healthcare system once we do get by it? When we come back, our good friend Dr. Keith Pochek's going to be here, share some thoughts on his view of where we go and what's going to happen. Quick break, right back with Keith. Stick around.
More American than workers standing up, and the union gives a voice to win. On the Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1917. That was the day IWW leader Frank Little was buried in Butte, Montana. Little had been lynched on August 1st by police agents thought to be working for the despised Anaconda Copper Company. He had arrived in town to help organize 14,000 striking copper miners. Devastated by the deaths of 168 miners in the June fire at Granite Mountain and Spectacular Mines, mine workers formed the Metal Mine Workers Union and walked off the job. Frank Little had previously worked as a hard rock miner and organizer for the Western Federation of Miners. He also took part in the free speech campaigns on the West Coast. Little was involved in early drives to industrially organize oil workers and lumberjacks. He voiced his opposition to the First World War and sought to stop workers from enlisting. When Little arrived in Butte in July, he worked to build strike support, picket lines, and spread the strike to other trades across the city. Early on August 1st, 6 masked men broke into the boarding house where he was staying. He was beaten and taken from his room. His assailants tied him to the bumper of their car and dragged him through the granite streets of Butte to the Milwaukee Bridge, where he was hanged. An ominous note was pinned to his bullet-ridden body with the words that read, "Others take notice, first and last warning." It included the numbers 3, 7, and 77, as well as the initials of other union organizers in the area. As many as 10,000 marched in his funeral procession. Days after his lynching, martial law was declared. Labor radicals were rounded up and charged with espionage. The miners' strike and union were crushed. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So Donald Trump was on Fox News today, and more cavalcade of crazy. Evidently he said, the virus is just going to go away. It's going to go away all by itself. It does that. Things go away. It'll go away like things go away. It'll go away. Don't worry about it. It's gonna, and look, we're in really good shape. The U.S. is in very good shape. It's going to be fine. Never mind the fact that, we're having, what is it, tens of thousands of new cases every day. Yesterday was a record day of deaths, 1,380. But hey, sunny optimism. I guess I guess when he says, shove the sunshine up your behind, I guess that's more literal for him than figurative. But he did talk about reopening the schools as well and said, look, children are almost immune. They're almost immune to it. But those old teachers should probably stay home. That is our president. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on, I guess, kids are almost immune, man. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal. I've asked our good friend, Dr. Keith Pochek, to come share some thoughts on, hey, maybe he knows better than I do. Maybe kids are immune. Dr. Pochek, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks, Rick. Thanks for having me. I enjoyed your intro. It drummed up some, Upton Sinclair, the Jungle for me, which is like such a formative book for me. But anyway, I appreciate that. It was great to hear.
No, it's really kind of, the rhetoric that comes, and look, people buy this, that, it'll just go away. Yeah, it'll go away when there's nowhere else for it to go.
Yeah, well, that's true. When you look at the numbers, are children a little, are they less likely to suffer severe complications? Yeah, they are. But what we have to realize is that, they are also amazing vectors for disease. You try to, teach a 3-year-old to wear a mask, in a social setting with hundreds of other people, and it's just not going to happen. So,
nope.
And you can't, you can't blame the kiddo for that. It's just, you have to have an understanding of microbiology to be able to realize why you have to wear a mask and why you have to social distance and why you have to, keep your hands out of your face and wash your hands, and you can't expect that population to necessarily understand it. So, of course, when we go back to school, are we going to see a huge bump in cases? Absolutely, we are.
Yeah, here's the thing. We're expecting a 3-year-old to get it when you look at the 50-year-old Karens running around screaming that I've got a card.
Exactly. Yeah. And and this is another. It's another situation where, obviously, healthcare workers have borne the brunt of a lot of bad policy, and we've had to deal with huge numbers, huge demand, angry people, understandably. But the same could be said of transportation workers, of restaurant. Look at restaurant workers. Making $2 and change an hour, and depending on tips, and having people sit around tables with no masks on, coughing and laughing, and they can just get decimated. These staff can just get decimated by this and have no livelihood because of it. And the fact that you just realize that workers are truly being treated as nothing more than a business expense, and that's.
But that's always been what it is, Keith. Workers have always been a negative on a balance sheet. As benevolent as any company's ever going to be, at the end of the day, the boss's kid is going to eat before your kid eats any day of the week, and there's never been a question, and there never will be a question about that.
Well, but I think that no, I don't know. I think that's a little pessimistic. I just think it depends on who's in power and who's looking out for the little people. I think that there's always this pendulum that swings between capital and labor, and there have been times when we really needed it. When you look at the New Deal and you look at recoveries that America's had in the past, and it's been governments and administrations who've looked out for regular Americans and have looked out for workers. And so I think that we can rekindle that if we're able to elect the right people.
Right.
I really do.
Yeah, but that comes back to government policy. My point is, at the end of the day, the capital class is always going to line their pockets first, and no matter how much PR and how much spin that they put into it, it's them first, and you're an afterthought. And I point to the fact that, and I'm sure you remember, like everybody else, all the talk of all the frontline heroes and the essential workers and how they were going to give like an extra $1 here or $2 there or a bonus. And boy, there were was PR everywhere. There were press releases and stories, but all that stuff's being clawed back. And now we're seeing not just are they clawing it back, they're taking more and more away and heaping more and more work on it. And I look at the medical profession. These nurses, as you've pointed out, they're overworked, understaffed, and it's only getting worse while the insurance companies are lining their pocket with massive profits.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the things people don't realize is that there really is a form of, especially for hospital workers, who are in the ER, who are in the ICUs and things like that. There truly is a form of PTSD that these folks deal with, and it's not so much that they're worried that that they're going to die at work. I mean, it's not the same as a soldier who's under fire, but you have this constant worry that one of the people who you're charged with caring for is going down the tubes, and you can't get to them, you can't fix it. I mean, these are like the anxiety dreams of healthcare workers who work in the acute setting, just because you're not supported enough. That's what drives, actually, to be honest with you. I mean, I have conversations like this all the time with folks who leave the emergency department, whether they're nurses, whether they're physicians, or whether they're physician assistants or nurse practitioners. Same theme over and over and over. I just felt like I couldn't, do the job that I wanted to be able to do and put my name on, and I was worried that things were going south and I couldn't recognize it, and there were so many demands placed on me that I was just overall felt like I was doing a poor job with all of them because there were so many demands. Yeah. And that's the situation, I think. And you could say this about a lot of workers. I think that education workers and teachers are in a very similar predicament. But you could say this about many other workers.
No, I think you're right. I think healthcare workers especially, though, because you guys see the stuff that none of us do. You watch the TV shows on ER and you go, oh, that's a little. You're seeing the unvarnished ER, not that the stuff they show us on TV. You're seeing the real misery, the real pain and the suffering. And then here's where I struggle, and where it would infuriate me. If I'm one of the nurses, or I'm a doctor like you are, and I see someone who should be vibrant and healthy, and this disease is just this virus is just eaten down to nothing, and I walk outside and I see a bunch of people not wearing masks and basically in the most ignorant of ways going about, screw you, I'm not doing it, it's my right, I would lose my ever-loving freaking mind.
And we just don't, and that drives home a good point, is that we don't connect, we don't communicate with each other, who are, working different jobs, seeing different things, and, so few of us, I think, in America have come across someone who's been really sick, or has been in the ICU, or has died of COVID, that it's still, to a lot of people, it's just like this boogeyman in the closet that they're not even really sure if it exists or not. And this, and then you throw in quarantine and the fact that we're compartmentalizing ourselves. I didn't quite say enough syllables. Anyway,
I'm with you too. It's a tough word.
Yeah,
compartmentalizing.
Anyway, yeah, we're dividing ourselves. Sorry.
There you go. That's better.
Into so many categories, and not connecting across those categories that we don't even really understand how real this is for some people. And instead we're just getting our info from media outlets, and for the right wing folks, for Fox News and God knows whatever
what are the crazy right wing outlets? Else. Alex Jones,
Alex
Jones, who's telling people to defensively kill people at protests.
Exactly, and we are unbelievably divided, and then you take something like this, and it's just. It's divided us even more. It's it's also unmasked some of the inequalities in America. I mean, you look at my wife and I were talking about who had a choice to send their kids back. People have a choice to send their kids back to school, and that's a really tough choice on what you're going to do either way. I mean, you could sacrifice your kid's social development, or you could you potentially risk them getting infected with COVID. And what's neglected in that discussion is that there are a lot of people who don't have any choice whatsoever. They've got to go back to work. They've got to keep the lights on. They've got to pay the bills. They've got to, and like any social event, any natural disaster, any major illness or pandemic, it's always disproportionately going to affect the people who are poor and disadvantaged, and this is going to just unmask that even more. It's just going to undo, I think, so much of what we have accomplished probably over the last 30, 40 years in moving towards equality, and that's just how much harder we're going to have to work. And
yeah. No, I'm with you. But here's the thing, and you had said a moment ago that you think healthcare workers suffer from a form of PTSD, and I absolutely agree. And in fact, I got a response from someone on Twitter who said, as a veteran, he believes that all of the essential workers, not just healthcare workers, should get the same kind of benefits that veterans coming back from war are getting, because this is an invisible enemy, and this is a breeding ground for PTSD in his view.
It is. I think it's definitely going to shorten a lot of people's careers. Hopefully not mine. We have an incredible team. We're working in the outpatient scenario. We're working in urgent care, and we're doing tons and tons of COVID evaluations and testing, and we've done so many things to try to keep our team safe and do a lot of these evaluations for minimally sick patients out there at the curbside, and it's worked very well. But how is that going to merge into flu season? This fall, are we still going to plan on keeping everyone outdoors? And it's just, there's so many questions here that that arise, and ultimately we just thank God we've got a team we've really rallied pretty well here in what we're doing in North Carolina, and we've done an incredible amount of testing, and we've diagnosed a few thousand cases on our team here, and we've remained, knock on wood, incredibly well.
Good for you.
And so, there's some hope. I think that's where it all starts. It's just with these little connections and these teams that are maybe tens or dozens of people, and that's how we move it forward. And we just keep on kind of pressing, and we look towards other areas of the country and other areas of the world and say, hey, look, they hit their peak, and eventually they hit the downslide, and things seem to normalize somewhat, and hope to God we get there.
Let me ask you this, because one of the concerns I get from a lot of people who are in the medical profession is there is this we're at war kind of mentality that's going on right now, and no one wants to leave at this moment while their coworkers or while their system is under siege, if you will. When this does recede, and it will at some point, do you fear that, like a lot of people do, that people are just going to go, you know what, I'm done, I'm out, and we don't get people into the healthcare field, and we end up worse off than when we started?
I think that's a real concern. I really do. I do think that we're going to see attrition. I think we probably already are. And we have times where to get shifts filled and things like that, we have to offer some extra pay and other sorts of incentives and already. But luckily we've been able to keep all of our sites open and are doing what we can to protect our teams. But I do. I think, and one of the things I think that is going to be a barometer, or I guess kind of a bellwether for that, is just the number of medical school applications that you see every year. And so that's something I think we've got to keep our eye on. But at the end of the day, still, it's going to be when these folks do finish residency and come out, where are they going to go? Is everyone going into a subspecialty? Are there people who are doing primary care in intensely urban and underserved rural areas or not? How do we incentivize that? I really, really worry that healthcare disparities and inequalities are just going to widen because of something like this.
Yeah. No, and the thing is as people continue to lose jobs, and or don't find new ones, the number of uninsured continue to go up, and it will be even more taxing on our system. Because look, the reality is as you know, we're taking care of the virus, and that's been the focus of our healthcare system. All of the other things that you know we would go to the hospital for or need medical services for are being kind of put on hold. And as someone pointed out to me,
Absolutely.
you know, had you not had your hip done when you did, Rick, you'd be still waiting. And I go, yeah, but I wouldn't be dead,
Yeah,
and I'd be
right.
happy to wait. But I would get to it eventually. Well, there's a lot of people out there like that now, where eventually they're going to get to it, and then there's going to be a slam on our system of people at a time when I fear people are going to be leaving.
Well, and the other thing too is that if everything's presenting later in the stage, just think about you and your hip. If you had to wait a few more months and it affected your function and your mobility that much more, and you were that much more deconditioned when you had your procedure done, how much longer and how much more painful would your recovery have been?
Yeah, I'm okay
You know
with
what
that.
I
I
mean?
would have lived.
And you would have lived, but you know, I mean, that could have really drawn things out, and that could have put you at risk for some more complications. And I think that we see more and more patients who are presenting later in the stages of their disease
Right.
because they're too concerned to come to the hospital. And hospitals, at least where I am, have done an amazing job of being able to cohort patients and sequester folks based on whether they're potentially COVID worrisome or not. And that's been incredible, but I don't think that necessarily the public understands that. They think, oh dear God, I can't go to the hospital now. I can't go to the ER.
So, in your view, is it's perfectly okay to go to the hospital then? I mean, hang around the ER. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
I mean, I would say that you never want to go there if you don't have to, but I think that the screening, at least where I am, is impressive as far as how they can keep upright folks who are, potentially, potential COVID patients upright and outside and out of the ED versus, folks who are clearly not worrisome for that, and universal masking and things like that as far as when they bring people back. It's been impressive to see. And so I think that they've done a great job with it so far.
Yeah, but on my part with the hip, I waited 10 years before from the time they told me you should do it to the time I actually did it. Another couple of months probably wouldn't have killed me.
maybe not.
Just throwing that out there as an aside. My wife, on the other hand, you never know. But me, I think I'd have gotten through it. I wanted to get your thoughts on this as well, though, because as you said, you're doing a great job of picking this stuff out. But there was an AP report today that's saying that the amount of testing is dropping. Even as simultaneously we see a rise in cases and a rise of daily death numbers, that the for a plethora of reasons, one being that the tests take so damn long to get. They're almost, what's the point? I'm curious your thoughts.
We've done, and this is interesting you bring this up, because I just a few days ago compared our data in our county, in Mecklenburg County, North Carolina, to national data. And so we have about a 1% mortality rate as far as diagnosed cases and mortality. The rest of the country is at around 3%. And so, my wife and I were talking, and I said, so either we're dramatically underestimating the number of deaths that we have related to COVID, which I don't think that's accurate.
Or you're testing a lot of people.
Or we're testing a lot of people and diagnosing a lot of asymptomatic and minimally symptomatic cases. And I clearly think it's that, especially where I sit, and I see the number of tests that we do every day. So, if there's any cause for optimism, it's that I honestly think that our mortality rate here in our county is probably closer to the true disease mortality rate, because I know how available testing is here. Why is that exactly? I mean, I think our state's done well, our county health departments have done well, but we also have two big competing healthcare systems that, to be honest, they want the business, and so they want to test people. And we're, the tests are pretty widely available here. And so if there's cause for optimism, I think that, take a peek at Mecklenburg County, North Carolina. It's not because I'm here.
No, look, the thing is, thank goodness. I mean, there's somewhere doing it right, because, what I see across this country is a major failure of leadership, especially in the quote unquote red states, where they're still, not sure what they want to do because, well, they still want to call it a hoax. And I just had this conversation the other day. Someone said that it's only 1%, a 1% death rate. And I go, yeah, that's still over 3 million people.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's and that's the debate you have with about sending your kids back to school. Yeah, sure, the math works out in your favor until it's your kid, and then all of a sudden it doesn't. And so it's going to be a leap of faith for some people. It's going to be for some people they're not going to have a choice. They're just going to have to go with it, and those are going to be the folks who are more likely to be disadvantaged and poor. Obviously, I mean that's every single crisis that's ever faced America and in America or the world in the history of the world. But is there any cause for optimism yet? I don't know. I mean, I think that we have to wait and see what the next month brings.
Right.
When we honestly see widespread, hey, let's go back to school.
But
see what the numbers show.
Here's my problem, though, Keith. There's been so much fudge in the numbers, to use a George W. Bush frame. There's been so much potential where I don't know that I trust any number that comes out anymore, because there's been so many shenanigans done. You've got an administration that is hell-bent on moving, pretending it doesn't exist, saying, it's just going to disappear. We got to move forward. And you've got a political system that's set up on, one party saying, we're not going to do anything for it, and the other party saying, we've got to lock down. And I think the average person is their head spinning with misinformation, disinformation,
right.
Too much information, no information. I mean, it's overload.
It is. I agree with you. I mean, I think that it's really fallen on local leadership at this point, and you could wind up in the wrong county, the wrong state, and you have no idea what's happening. That's just because there's an utter vacuum at the top, and we all know that.
Yeah. So you don't agree with Republican Alabama senatorial candidate Tubby Tuberville when he says that we should just let Donald Trump do everything, send the Democrats home. He said we probably get more done with just the president running the country, so let the Democrats go home and do whatever they do, which is not govern, which is not to try and help the American people, and President Trump can get it done. He'll get it done.
That's a great. What a good little fascist he is, right? What a good little fascist. And isn't it incredible that this is a guy that coached, a football team of probably 80% African American players for I don't know how many years in Alabama, and this was the unabashed fascist sort of ideology that he had throughout the course of that. Is that incredible?
No, it's not incredible. It's who these football coaches always were. I mean, there's no shock in this to me. This is a guy who made, for years, $2 million plus salaries a year off of exploiting poor kids. So look, I've got no delusions that this is a decent guy.
But how can you get how can you get those players to rally behind you with that mentality? I mean, are you able to lie that convincingly to people's faces to get them to kind of follow you and rally behind you? I mean, that's what blows my mind more than anything. I just feel like maybe, if it were me trying to lie in front of that many people, that everyone would see right through me, and maybe they're just that talented at it.
Or that's just how they are. I mean, at the end of the day, you go play football at Auburn and you do well, you might have a chance of, cashing in.
Yeah, and maybe that's what he said in living rooms and whatnot of the parents of these kids, and who knows. It's unbelievable. I mean, the percentage of people who have no concept of American founding ideals and what we fought against to establish the country to begin with, just inconceivable. I think I tweeted this maybe a few days ago, where it's I'm really shocked at how 5 years ago I had no idea how many closet fascists there were in America. When I look back at myself 5 years ago.
Yeah, right? No, you're absolutely right. You just want the trains to run on time.
Yeah, exactly. That's all it was after, I guess. I don't know. Maybe that's me being naive and eternally optimistic that everyone sort of understood civics and American history the way that I did, and clearly they did not. We have different ideas of how all this started.
How do you think this start? How do you think I started this? 15 years ago, this Labor Day, I started this program because my Teamster buddies, people I worked with every day, had a very different view of the world than I did, and I'm still trying to figure out how it is that look, it started over really one thing. I had a union guy tell me we'd make more money if the union wasn't here, and I said show me where in this country where that's true. Where you would get better pension, better health care, better wages. Show me where that's happening. And then I would ask you why you aren't there.
Right.
And, again, but it's been, they've been fed so much over misinformation, so much pandering. It's terrible. And this is where it's gotten us. But again, like I said, you got a football coach, a guy coaching a freaking game, making $2 million a year, when the nurse who's caring for someone who's making maybe $70,000 a year, and being begrudged of that. I got a problem with that.
I saw a map where it was the highest paid state employee. You've probably seen this.
Yeah, it's all football coaches.
State employee. Yeah, where it was pretty much everywhere south of Pennsylvania was a high school football or basketball coach. In North Carolina, it was a basketball coach because it was probably Roy Williams at UNC. But that was the highest state paid employee was a football or basketball coach.
Yeah, well, when they make twice
priorities are.
When they make twice the wage of the union, the university president, there's kind of a problem with the system.
Yeah.
Just a thought. But anyway, Keith, I appreciate the time. It's always good talking with you. I hope things turn. I hope Trump's right. I hope it goes away just all by itself. But I know it's not going to.
No, it's not yet. But I mean, hey, we can. We're 4 months in right now, and we're we still got our fists up and fighting. And so I mean, that's a testament to the team of folks that we have down here. So I'm proud of them, and I think we're going to weather the storm.
Good stuff. Keith, I appreciate the insight, man. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Rick. Have a good night.
You as well. As always, our good friend Dr. Keith Pochek. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1993. That was the day that the Family Medical Leave Act went into effect. Union members worked hard to support this legislation, testifying before Congress and holding rallies. It was an uphill battle to pass the bill. Starting in 1984, family medical leave was brought before Congress. Year after year, the bill failed to win enough votes. In 1991, it finally passed Congress, but was vetoed by President George H.W. Bush. He vetoed it again the following year. Then, in February of 1992, newly elected President Bill Clinton signed the FMLA into law. It guaranteed that most employers with 50 or more workers must give their employees up to 12 weeks of unpaid leave for a serious health condition for themselves, their spouse, parent, or child. In his speech signing the act, President Bill Clinton declared, quote, "This bill will strengthen our families, and I believe it will strengthen our businesses and our economy as well." He went on to say, "I know that men and women are more productive when they are sure they won't lose their jobs because they're trying to be good parents, good children. Our businesses should not lose the services of these dedicated Americans. And over the long run, the lessons of the most productive companies in the world, here at home and around the world, are that those who put their people first are those who will triumph in the global economy." He said that family and medical leave is a matter of pure common sense and a matter of common decency. It will provide Americans what they need most, peace of mind. Never again will parents have to fear losing their jobs because of their families. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So some interesting election results coming out of Missouri. Evidently on Tuesday, voters approved expanding Medicaid in the Show Me state that will cover about 230,000 low-income residents. With 99% of the precincts reporting, they claim 53% voted yes, 47 no. Missouri is now the sixth red state to expand Medicaid, the second to do so thanks to the virus, Oklahoma being the first one. Their governor there, Mike Parson, who obviously opposed it, said it would just be too expensive. We just can't cover those poor people. Sorry, poor people, you're out of luck. And as someone who is a supporter of a single payer system, I look at this AP story that just came out. That it's mind blowing to me that this isn't a bigger story. And I've seen it in a couple of other places. I think Bloomberg did a bit on it the other day about it. But our big insurance companies, Anthem, Humana, United Health Group, CVS Health, which I guess owns Aetna. These big, massive companies, they're having just record profits. In fact, reported their second quarter profits were double what they were the year before. And it's all because, as I was saying a minute ago with Keith, so many people are just holding off on care. They're self-rationing because they don't want to go into what is perceived as a dangerous environment. Look, I don't want to go to the doctor's office. I don't want to go anywhere near any healthcare facilities. But that's not just during a pandemic, because that's where the sick people are. I try to stay away from that. And even at a time when you're not supposedly quote unquote social distancing, I'm social distancing. I stay away from those places because that's where people die. Just how it is. But I look at this, and the fact of the matter is, these big companies are reaping enormous benefits from this pandemic. And it's going to go into CEO pockets. It's going to go into shareholder pockets. It's going to be divvied around, and look how wonderful we made of profits. A single payer system, and this is the logical argument in this case, a single payer system benefits from this, and that money is then held in reserve for when the flood of cases happen. And when we have to have a pandemic where we have to allocate a boatload of money to get people tested, and as Dr. Keith Pochek pointed out, his county is testing really well. That money goes back into the system. That doesn't cost us anymore. If you have a healthcare system that's set up for these moments, for catastrophe, where you've actually planned that a crisis is going to happen, bad things do happen. They like to call it a rainy day fund. Let's call it whatever you want, a pandemic fund, a flood fund, the seas are rising fund, the climate change fund, whatever you want to call it, but have money set aside, have resources set aside so that when bad things happen, we take care of it, and we don't have to dig deep into people's pockets to then fund the horrible. I mean, we have such a really bizarre system in that we have people who are literally profiting billions when we're miserable. So when I saw this story, it was just one of those moments where I'm like, I'm even more pushing for the idea of a single payer system. And I've said from the beginning, I don't care if it's a private system or a public system. I don't care how it's run. It has to be one system. It has to be comprehensive. It has to be cradle to grave. It has to be where you're not jumping from one to the other. And look, I've said a million times, we've got a system set up that these big insurers who are making wild amounts of profit, that they benefit from healthier people to insure. The unhealthy people, well, they end up on the back of Medicaid. And now Missouri has expanded Medicaid, and it's going to take some of the burden off of the system there as well. We insure all of our seniors who are really the most expensive for healthcare with Medicare. Half of the kids in this country are born, and it's paid for by CHIP or by Medicaid. You've got, the numbers are just staggering. And what we've done is we've created an environment where all of the costly stuff, because we know people use healthcare the first 5 years and the last 5 years of their life overwhelmingly. We've taken that out of the equation for corporate America, and they just get the people who are able to show up to those jobs who have worsening health benefits, who then self-ration their care so they don't spend too much. Or like me, just don't want to go anywhere near the hospital. It's really kind of a screwy system, and one that I guess you could argue it's an American system. Because we put profit always first. We put the rich always first. The wealthy always get their pound of flesh. And, as I was saying a minute ago with Keith, the reality is no matter how benevolent corporate America is, no matter how benevolent the boss is, and I've worked for good companies and I've worked for bad ones, no matter how good they are and how well they treat you, at the end of the day, labor costs are a negative on a balance sheet, and the second they have the ability to cut those labor costs, they're going to do it. And ultimately, it's just that simple. And you go, well, those are people. Yeah, I know, those are people. Profit always is taken into account over people. And look, I get the fact that you need to make a profit, but it comes down to how much. The reality is you go back to these health insurance companies, double the amount of profit over the last quarter. Now they're saying that, because of the Affordable Care Act, and this is one of those moments where you go, thank goodness for Obamacare. A lot of people will get some bit of rebates back. There'll be some of their premiums paid back, because in the law, and one of the brilliant pieces of the law, is that I think it's 85% of the dollars that come in have to be spent on healthcare. So you don't spend a whole bunch of money on advertising, a whole bunch of money on CEO pay, and that there potentially could be a windfall for a lot of folks. Now the question becomes, what happens if the Supreme Court decides, we're going to chuck the Affordable Care Act? What happens to those rebates? Do they go by the wayside? I would say yes. And I would say this is why, corporate America, the big insurers and the wealthy have been pushing for its demise, because it benefits the working poor. So everybody who's out there going, screw that Obamacare. No. Because we're in a moment right now where a lot of people lost their jobs and they're trying to figure out how to get their family on the Affordable Care Act. How they get that Obamacare. It is what little safety net we have. But let me ask you, just from a simple standpoint, 54 million people, first-time unemployment filers. Probably a good majority of those folks had health insurance and are now scrambling to find protection for their family. Scrambling to find something that's going to make sure if the kids fall and break their knees in the parking lot riding their bike, that they're going to not go broke and end up homeless. Wouldn't it be simpler just to have a plan that, as an American, you get health care and we pay for it? Nothing's free. But that from the moment you're born to the moment you die, it's the same system. Everybody's in it. And the reason everybody has to be in it, sorry, there's no exceptions, is that, the rich guy who's used to getting his VIP treatment, which if he wants to buy a private plan to still get some of that, he can, but his behind's got to be in that too. Because this way, maybe we don't end up with a system that's just pure crap. Just my thought. I'd love to hear yours, though. There are a lot of thoughts on the healthcare system. A lot of people think Donald Trump has overhauled it with his teledoctor stuff, which mind blowing. But you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, fall's coming around. School, who knows if the local school that my kids go to will be open. I know they're staying home, but we'll talk a little bit about that when we come back. Stick around.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1981. It was a dark day in U.S. labor history. Nearly 13,000 members of the Professional Air Traffic Controllers Organization had been out on strike for 2 days. At issue were working conditions and hours. More than 6,000 flights were canceled on the first day of the strike alone. President Ronald Reagan held a press conference at the White House's Rose Garden to address the work stoppage. He declared that the strike constituted a peril to national safety. He also announced that strikes by federal workers were illegal. Although this was technically true, federal workers had participated in more than 20 strikes and sickouts in the years leading up to the Patco walkout. Yet President Reagan seized on the opportunity to bust the union. And in what has been called the shot heard round the boardroom, he announced that every Patco worker that did not return to work within 48 hours would be fired. He made good on his promise, and more than 11,000 air traffic controllers lost their jobs. The president also decreed that the strikers could never be rehired. By October, the Federal Labor Relations Authority had decertified the union. President Reagan's actions had a chilling impact on the labor movement. Before Patco, there were 300 major strikes on average in the United States each year. Afterwards, that number dropped to 30. 3 decades after the decision, Joseph McCartin, a professor at Georgetown University, described the impact in a New York Times article, writing, "More than any other labor dispute of the past 3 decades, Reagan's confrontation with the Professional Air Traffic Controllers Organization, or PATCO, undermined the bargaining power of American workers and their labor unions." Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So Thales Academy in Wake Forest, North Carolina is in the news again. You may remember Thales made the news last week when Vice President Mike Pence and billionaire Betsy, Education Secretary Betsy DeVos, visited a classroom there and praised the school to no end. You know, courage that they reopened, and you know how wonderful and thoughtful and visionary and all that they are. Well, this week, Thales is back in the news again because evidently 4th graders there are being asked to quarantine after one of the students tested positive for COVID-19. You knew this was coming. Evidently, the school was notified on Monday that the student had been infected by someone living in his house. And this is the problem with this whole scenario. You've got all these kids coming into one place, usually like 30, 40, 50 kids in the classroom, and then they go home. And, you know, maybe they're exposed there, maybe they're exposed at school, and this is an opportunity for explosion. Also Georgia. Evidently, Georgia opened for a day on Monday, and 2 of the big school districts there, and one of them, obviously, now tested positive. A bunch of the teachers are going to be sent home. A bunch of the children are going to be sent home. 2-week quarantine. And you go, this was day one. And here's the thing. This is the beginning of the year. This is the beginning of all this. Soon we'll be talking about this kind of stuff all the time. And the sad reality is we have no leadership whatsoever on this issue. Anyway, we're here to talk a little bit about maybe what we do this fall and how things are going to go. I've asked Tiffany Crow to come talk with us. She is a Tennessee school teacher. She's written a great piece over at our Badass Teacher website, Death Till Death Do Us Part, Being a Teacher in 2020. Tiffany, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you for having me.
So death do you part. I thought it was a job. I know it's a calling. I know it's a vocation. This is taking it a little far, don't you think?
I do. And I think that this is, metaphorically speaking, the straw that broke the camel's back, which is a saying that, if you're from the South, you probably heard it a lot. So I think that this is just a demand that's a bit too much for teachers, and teachers traditionally are individuals who really dedicate their life to their profession.
Right, I'm with you. But I don't know if you saw today, the president said that kids are almost immune to it, Tiffany, and that They'll be fine. But those old teachers, you should probably stay home.
Well, I dare say that our president perhaps does not keep up with evolving data, and as this virus progresses, we learn more about it. And so there's plenty of new data supporting that children absolutely do contract it, that they absolutely do spread it to adults and other children. And so that's just completely false, but it's also a complete disregard for human life, and especially the lives of people who have traditionally given their own money, their own time,
Yep.
all their energy to a profession.
No, it's incredible to me. But being from the South as you are, I thought for sure that your response was going to be, "Oh, bless his heart."
Well, I think that is even too nice of a sentiment to offer for our president, in my opinion, right now.
There you go. Okay, so let me ask you this, because you're a COVID survivor, and
Right.
this is one of these moments where, the topic clearly is we're going to send kids into a classroom. In fact, my district hasn't decided what they're doing yet, and a lot of districts, which is really just bizarre to me that they haven't come up with a plan yet. But you got it, you lived, you made it. Not a big deal, right?
Well, I think that is a really toxic mind frame that a lot of people are in. They really see it as a black and white issue. They see it as you either live or you die. If you die, it's probably because you were already unhealthy, because you were already sick, you were old. You're just 1%, right? 1% doesn't matter. But even with that, it's not simply a live or die issue. There's so much in between. I'm experiencing the in between. I certainly didn't die. I'm still alive, and I'm grateful for that.
Thank goodness.
But it's definitely impacting my life and my quality of life. And I don't know if it will be for a few more months, a couple years, or potentially the rest of my life.
And I guess we still don't know. Since you had it, is it possible that you could get it again? Is it possible that you could expose others to what you've already had? I don't know. I mean, and I don't know that we absolutely know anything for certain other than that.
Right. And I think maybe most of our non-believers, or, more specifically our elected officials and our president, maybe they've forgotten about the scientific method. So maybe they're unfamiliar with watching that unfold. We do not know enough about this virus. I mean, it's brand new in humans, so we just don't know. There's so much we don't know. I mean,
Right.
Even when I go to the doctor with my symptoms, of lasting fatigue, of heart rate fluctuation, of unexplainable rashes, brand new anemia, digestive issues, cognitive brain fog, and that's just a few of the symptoms. It is literally a mystery. I was perfectly healthy, 27 years old, right before contracted COVID-19, despite I was being careful, but that was prior to the citywide mask mandate. And so probably on my biweekly trip to the grocery store, all it took was, this is how crazy it'll make you, literally. I have narrowed it down to that I was probably having trouble with my contact lenses and probably touched my eye. I mean, that is how much I've really analyzed. Where could I have gotten this? And just that one slip up really has cost me dearly.
That's terrible. And look, the thing is, and you bring this back to a classroom setting. And I said from the beginning, as anyone who knows who's had a kid in a classroom where one kid had head lice, within a couple of days, everyone has it, and you're washing all the sheets and sanitizing everything, combing out hair and all of that. Head lice is a minor nuisance, and as fast as it spreads across a classroom, imagine an airborne pathogen. This is my problem with sending kids back into the schools. And look, I understand that, that we need to have, an educated populace. Kids can't lose a year of education, and that families need a place for kids to be while they're working. But it just seems like a really bad idea to me to send, 20, 30, 40 kids into a classroom where they're packed in like sardines. And I look at the pictures from Georgia on day one. There was no social distancing going on. This just sounds like an opportunity for super spreader on steroids.
Right. And to people who claim that children, I know there's still people who think that children cannot contract this virus, or if they contract it, they have absolutely no symptoms. And I can tell you, I have a 6-year-old and an 18-month-old, and within 24 hours of my symptoms, they also developed symptoms, and they were considered presumed probable cases. And it took 24 hours for my entire family of 4 to have COVID-19.
Wow.
And we all were affected completely differently.
Wow.
And so I caution people, based on my situation, the main reason I've really advocated about being what they call a COVID-19 long hauler is because I genuinely think that people think it is you live or you die. I'm not high risk, so I'm okay. I'll probably get it anyway. It'll be like the flu, and then I'll be fine. And I'll just tell you that the actual 16 days that I had a fever and was, actively sick with the virus, it was absolutely not like the flu at all. And then everything that has come after, I've never had a flu that 100 days after I was well, I was still suffering from symptoms daily.
Wow. And, this is one of those moments where, now you have a pre-existing condition. And, if I'm getting this right, if the president gets his way and our Supreme Court throws out the Affordable Care Act, and with it, all of the mandates for coverage for pre-existing conditions, you could almost be uninsurable.
Right. And I'm already facing difficulties, in the area of insurance and medical costs. Last year during open enrollment, I actually dropped down to the cheaper plan because I'm a teacher and I'm not rich, because I was healthy and I never went to the doctor and I was never sick. And so now I'm on a high deductible plan.
Wow.
And my insurance company actually stopped paying 100% for COVID-19 related treatment on July 31st. So now, I'm responsible for 20% of this, 20% of that, these copays. I mean, right now I need to schedule an MRI, but I'm waiting until after open enrollment so that I can go to a plan that is more expensive monthly, but that will make these treatments and these tests, at least a little bit affordable.
Yeah, because you have no idea what's coming down the road. So, then what's your advice for administrators who are trying to figure out what they're going to do? Because look, I've been looking at this over the summer going, I hope they've come up with and developed a plan that they can move forward if we can't open the schools. I hope they have a plan, because look, nobody wants the teachers to get sick. And even, the weird thing is idiotic as Trump is, and how little I think he understands, his statement today that, teachers are another story. He believes kids are immune, but teachers are another story, and that old teachers should just stay home. This is one of those moments where maybe all teachers should be staying home.
That's absolutely correct. So because teachers already face low salaries for degreed professionals, especially in southern states, many of the teachers that work in my district actually are high risk simply because they're poor. Okay, they're poor, and poor people are at higher risk for health issues, pre-existing conditions because of lack of access to affordable health care. In my district, we actually have 78% of our teachers and staff are identify as a Black or brown person, a minority group. 93% of our students are African American or Hispanic. So we also are a high poverty district. So we have families and communities that are already marginalized by lack of access to affordable care or quality care. They are already in poverty. There are already challenges. And so this is just going to be the nail in the coffin. I mean,
Literally.
And I think people don't realize that. As a teacher, with my salary, I actually qualify for Pen Care, which is, a branch off of Medicaid or CHIP, whatever. So my children, I actually am literally close enough to the poverty line for my children to get state benefit style insurance.
That's insane.
And that's a problem. And so what I want people to know is these problems related to funding in public schools, particularly in high poverty areas, already existed.
Right.
They were already here. But now it's an emergency because they've been exposed and because we need free childcare, basically. And I'm not angry at parents for needing that because our society is kind of like put them in a position to depend on schools as a means of a free place for their children to be during the day while they go to work. It aligns with most people's work hours. The school system, we have done this to ourselves in a way because we've always tried to do more, to be more. We've tried to do it all, to be it all, even though we have never been funded in a way that we could be the mecca for social programs. And so now we're just desperately asking, if you want schools open and you want them open safely, physically, well, in my particular county, there's just no way right now. We're set to be like New York. Our community spread is just through the roof. But even if it was not, we need money for staffing capacity. We need money for resources. Right here in Tennessee, let me just tell you what our governor, Bill Lee, this is his program that he has championed for teachers because he is just like Trump. He's urging everybody to physically reopen schools, no matter what. And so this is the teacher kit that he is planning to supply, but actually districts who've already started back in person still haven't received theirs. This is what it consists of. Let me just tell you. 20 disposable masks or 2 cloth masks, which are made of like sock material that you can see through. 1 100-count box of gloves, up to 20 ounces of hand sanitizer, and 1 100-count disinfectant wipe. And it also, in his minute, he said, please be aware that the items in the kit will be delivered by product, and the school will need to distribute each item to the teachers. The initial shipment is a month's worth of materials, and schools may reorder monthly.
A month's worth? I was going,
Yes.
So that's a day's worth of stuff for the classroom? Okay.
That's probably less than that. If you are a secondary teacher like me, you will see 100 students a day.
Wow.
So even if and I've always had class sizes that were 30 plus.
It's crazy. That's insane to me. So let me ask you, last line of questioning then. What advice do you give to parents? I mean, we're obviously, my wife and I are fortunate. We're in a situation where we can keep our kids home. But what advice are you giving people?
So, as unfair as it is, parents more than ever now have really got to pay attention, vote appropriately for candidates who are friends of public education. And then we also have to advocate for accountability for our current elected officials. We have to demand that they invest in citizens, in communities, in social programs, because this child care crisis, it is the result of years of American people, particularly Tennesseans, being starved of social programs in favor of big corporate tax breaks. So we have to demand that the people who are responsible for the broken system fix it. Because simply putting a Band-Aid, as teachers have done for so long, on a problem is not going to fix this one. And it's not simply going to be an inconvenience this time. It's going to cost people lives and livelihoods. And the thing about it is, schools could be open for a week and then shut back down, and then you're still in a position to have to find emergency child care.
Yep.
So in my district, I will say that I'm really proud of a lot of community organizations that are already rallying together to provide appropriately socially distanced and safe spaces for some of our highest need families and parents. So I think we just have to place our attention where it is due. We have to place our anger where it's due and not on the people who are also victims of this broken system, which are teachers and schools.
I'm right there with you, Tiffany. I appreciate the thoughts. I wish you the best. I hope you get well and you stay well. And thanks for sharing your story with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Good stuff. Tiffany Crow, Tennessee teacher, COVID survivor. She's got a piece out that I think everyone should take a look at. Till Death Do Us Part, Being a Teacher in 2020. We're going to link out on social media how you can take a look at that. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm David Philman, Executive Director of AFSCME Council 13. AFSCME members enforce regulations, keep prisoners behind bars, take care of patients, protect the environment, and more. Chances are you may never see that AFSCME member working in a sewage plant, diving underwater to repair a bridge, inspecting an elevator, or answering a 911 call. But aren't you glad they do? For more information, visit AFSCME13.org.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith. Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I've been waiting all day to talk to my next guest about the new Trump ad that's out. Evidently, there are a bunch of images during the ad that they've put out of Joe Biden praying, where they're attempting to make him look, feeble and old and adulting and all those things. And he's just actually praying. And it's one of those weird things because didn't Trump win the evangelical vote? Anyway, that's why I've asked my good friend, former Congressman and political analyst Bob Ney to come talk with us. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Well, thank you.
So have you seen the new ad out by the Trump campaign?
Right, and now aren't they trying to actually mock him for kneeling?
They're trying to mock him for a lot of things. As I'm looking at this ad, I'm going, it's whatever they can do to hit him because he's kicking their behind right now. Right,
and he has a $283 million buy coming.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and you know what? If you have a $283 million buy, which is what Biden has, without putting it in writing, you're not really worrying about money right now? So money is coming in?
Yeah, I got to think. I got to think a lot of money is coming in right now because, everybody I talk to, they're freaking out. Because, economically, the country's heading in the wrong direction. 2.5 million businesses closed, 54 million people, first-time unemployment filers. Things are not good. And this administration has really done nothing to lead us out of that. So I got to think the moneyed interests are going, we might need a change.
Right. Now, of course, in this ad, too, Joe Biden was kneeling in all reality to speak to a child.
Right.
And they're trying to make it look like he was doing, the American flag alternative quote. And I think that's what they were trying to also achieve. You're also going to see pictures of him in China, and you're going to see, just different, themes. And it's going to be kind of the same one, though. Biden will let people burn your homes down. Biden will kneel to people. Biden will, basically get a second summer home in Beijing, China. I mean, you're going to see this.
Oh, absolutely. But I'm waiting for the Twitters to put, to basically Photoshop Biden everywhere. I've been waiting for that all day because I guess now it's okay to Photoshop in these ads. I mean, honesty, and I know honesty and politics don't go together, but at least at some point in the past, I'd like to believe that there was at least a little bit of honesty instead of, there was the one image of, Biden, I guess he's touching his forehead where they put a microphone in it. They actually Photoshopped a microphone into his hand.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, yeah, you're going to see. And he was talking to a child, but again, and it's been pointed out about Trump's ad, but I don't think they care.
Yeah.
Because I heard when I viewed this, I heard from people saying, "Well, he was kneeling. Was that at the football game?" No, that's what they do. And
so you think it's going to work? You think it's?
No, I don't think. I mean, is it going to be effective for people sitting there that like Trump? Yes, of course, anything will be effective. For people that are just totally disgusted with the system, if they think he was just kneeling to someone or against the flag, quote unquote, maybe you'll make a difference. I just don't think it's an effective ad. Now, to me, if you wrap him around China and you take his statements he's made with his own voice and do some of that, he has to defend that. I mean, I still think that's his big. And it's not because I love to politically beat up China, which I do. I'm not going to lie about it. I always have, because I think they're unfair to our workers. But Biden has to make sure they come out swinging on that one, and go against what Trump's going to say about China.
No, we agree on the China front. In fact, since you brought China up, what are your thoughts on banning TikTok?
Right. Well, this gets personal because my daughter can't stand TikTok because she has a teenage daughter, right? So she doesn't like TikTok anyway. So I've heard about TikTok for quite a while, but TikTok itself, look, the bottom line is China started this game, and that was in an article today, just stated just like that. They did. They started this game. There was a point in time because the internet was new under Bill Clinton's term, right? And then it came into Bush, and there was a push by both Clinton and Bush and eventually Obama to have this kind of global cooperation to build networks. That was out there.
Right.
Some people liked it, some didn't. But the bottom line is China killed that. I mean, they started their own game, their own networks, because they don't want anybody controlling anything that they do because they want to control people so they can keep certain things out of the hands of their people.
Right.
Such as, freedom of speech and seeing things. So I think that there's two ways to answer what you just asked. I think, number one, I love it. If they're cracking down on TikTok, I love it. Here's the problem, though. Well, number two, I should say, if Bill Gates buys it, I could care less. Bill Gates, Bezos, whoever, whoever wants to buy it can buy it and stabilize it. But here's the problem. You can't, the president cannot basically, try to cut a deal for them to do it or some incentive, for them to do it.
Right. And in fact, if you remember, he said that, he thinks he should get a cut of whatever the sale price is.
And I saw that and I thought, why would you say that? I mean, why on earth would you say you should get a cut of it?
Because that's who he is, man. He's a con man. That's his gig. He's no different than the local loan shark who needs his VIG. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I know. Still amazes me, though. He could have a win on just saying, Bill Gates, go get TikTok. But I think clamping down on China anytime we can, I think is good until they change their behavior.
Is that possible, though? I mean, is it possible that China's ever going to change their behavior? Because as you pointed out, I'm a big fan of net neutrality, and thanks to Trump, we've killed that in this country. But I think globally, net neutrality is the best option. China clearly not ever going to allow that to happen. So how can you continue to deal with a country that you have just completely bipolar views on society, on all kinds of workers' rights, human rights, civil rights. Go down the list. How do you continue to do that? But then there's the other side of this, and a listener had asked me, okay, we've banned TikTok. What's going to go down the road? What does this look like when the Chinese start saying, well, we're going to ban GM or we're going to ban whatever? And I'm like, I'm actually okay with that.
I am too. And look, when the World Trade Organization permanent trade vote for China came up, I call it the unholy, and my friends hate to hear me say what I'm about to say, but the unholy alliance. It was a Gingrich-Clinton deal, okay? Gingrich and Clinton saw eye to eye on permanent trade status. I personally sat with Gingrich, and I personally sat with Bill Clinton, and both of them, you could have had them in the same room because they both said the same thing. If we get this, we are going to change China's behavior. People are going to get human rights. They're going to get great working conditions. We have the tools if you do this. Of course, I didn't vote for it. I was on with Bernie Sanders on the doing press events, trying to stop it. But we did it, and that was a delivery to China exactly what it wanted. And after that, it had a field day all these years. So my attitude now would be, and if I was still back in office, it'd be the same thing: is okay, if they kick GM, they kick it out. Let's make cars here.
Yeah.
We'll do it. And the government should step up to give incentives as long as, the corporation doesn't just suck all the money out, as long as workers are taken care of. I've got no problem with that either.
Yeah, here's my problem. Yesterday we had a guest on talking about the PPP loans. And, she's my China go-to person. And she said, just millions and millions of dollars went to Chinese companies through these PPP loans that, we didn't, who thought of that when you were crafting the CARES Act, that, a foreign country is going to, the Chinese government, and it's not Chinese companies, it's the Chinese government who owns these state-owned enterprises who literally taking our money. We're borrowing. This is the thing. We're borrowing money so that we can give it back to the people we're borrowing it from while still owing them the money.
And the other thing, too, and this is where the Congress really, really failed. First of all, they didn't require the administration to even tell them, who were getting certain loans. But number two, they didn't write in enough. I know it was an urgent situation. I know about the virus. They didn't take in enough time to write in some rules to this thing. I know a personal case of a law firm that somebody applied for $10,000. They were told they could get $250,000 for a law firm. And the head lawyer turned around to the other lawyer and said, "I don't want any part of that." But they could get it if they wanted it. $250,000 for what? They didn't lay off any lawyers,
Yeah, I had talked about a number of the conservative think tanks and the anti-gay groups,
right,
and the Ayn Rand Institute, which is, I got to tell you, if there's one moment where you go, the conservative movement has lost their way, it's when the Ayn Rand Institute has its hand out for government money.
Right.
Or am I the only one who sees that as really kind of ironic?
No, I mean, I think it's wrong, and I just don't know how they look themselves in the mirror to do that.
Yeah, well, I guess at the end of the day, we all have our price, right?
Right, you got it.
We all have our price. Now, China's also saying that we're endangering peace because we're not allowing them just to take over the entire South China Sea and sweep up Taiwan and all of that.
Oh, we've done something even worse. Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar said yesterday he's going to go and lead a delegation to Taiwan in the coming days, and China just had an absolute fit over it. Why are they going to Taiwan? This is a slap to the face of the Chinese people. How dare they go to Taiwan? And of course they do this. If you really want to see them freak out, go ahead and have a meeting with high-level people in the Dalai Lama. Then they also freak out over that. That one freaks them out, I think, even more than Taiwan. It's again, they want you to do everything, that they tell you to do. Don't engage Hong Kong, don't engage Taiwan. It's theirs. you have no right to do this. I mean, it's not like we went over and said we were going to help launch missiles.
Right.
It's a visit of the Health and Human Services Secretary. That's all.
Yeah, it's not like we did like Eisenhower did and sent the Pacific Fleet to
Right.
to surround the Taiwan. We didn't do that.
Right.
Kind of makes you it kind of makes you wonder where we are as a globe. And I talked about this yesterday. I don't know if you saw the story, but Japan is now looking into first strike capabilities. They're now trying to revamp their military to be able to be aggressors. And it's one of these moments where you go, is it that they look at us and say, we're no longer able to keep the peace in the globe, or maybe we're the cause of it? I don't know.
Well, it's amazing because it's in their constitution. That's why we are over there. It's in their constitution to not even have, a military buildup, and that's in their constitution. But now it's decided to scrap. I think it was the Aegis. I think it was. It was a land-based missile defense system, and it kind of surprised everybody. And now they're talking about first strike capability, and it isn't. I don't know, where this came from or how it develops, but yes, I mean, it's sort of like eye for eye. The whole world's blind. Everybody's into a buildup.
Yeah, and the person that I talked to yesterday said, maybe this is not a bad thing, in that maybe China starts diverting some of its resources to building its military instead of robbing and stealing our manufacturing. And I'm not so sure I like that idea. I'm not sure it's such a great idea, but I guess at some point you getting them to stop stealing from us, I guess you could have to do that one way or another.
Well, it would be good, and of course we should have made a heavier alliance with India. India has a border with Chinese. They had an Indo-Chinese war. After India allowed the Dalai Lama in 1959, and eventually there was the 1962 border war between the countries, but India has complained about China forever. And the next thing you know, look what China is doing. China tries to outreach with the development program to India. Then it does a deal with the Iranians, China does, and it just keeps spreading its tentacles. So I think we have to, play a little smarter on all this. That doesn't mean that we always think we can fly a missile somewhere or a military, aircraft somewhere. We have to be a little bit smarter, I think, with some alliances we do.
No, in fact, this is something I talked about back in 2010, and I think we talked about it at some point. You remember when the Tea Party was losing their mind over foreign aid?
Yes.
For me, this is the result of cutting that foreign aid. If we're not filling that space, somebody will fill the void, and it's been the Chinese who have come in, and they've given very lucrative contracts and taken over mineral rights and done all the things that we used to do.
Correct. And then Iran, again, the Iranian government is no walk in the park picnic. I understand that, but we cut the Iran nuclear deal under Trump. We cut off Iran. We were going to strangle it. John Bolton came in. They won't be able to breathe. We got them now. And what did they do? They still continue to talk to Europe, and then the Iranians cut a big deal with the Chinese. Well, they're about to, with the Chinese. And the Chinese are going to help them find a way around our sanctions. And where does that put us at?
No, and this is the weird thing, because we see our allies, doing things with China. We see our allies staying in the nuclear deal, our quote unquote allies, who we've kind of abandoned. So Biden's got a lot of, if the conservatives thought Obama did the apology tour when he took over, what's Biden going to have to do to get those countries to come back to being, okay, you were crazy for a while, but now things are better.
Now, one good thing about Joe Biden, somebody asked me the other day, they said, you served with him, what's the one thing that stands out about Joe Biden? And I told them, foreign policy. Joe Biden in the Senate, besides, other things he was known for, chair judiciary, and et cetera, but he was considered one of the best foreign policy people ever that had been there. So I think, Biden would, you're right, would kind of have to do an apology tour, but he could, I think, quickly attempt to mend some fences, with especially Europe, our allies in Europe.
And finally, it's supposed to happen this week, and it's probably not going to happen today. The VP choice. We're going away for a little camping trip over the weekend, so it figures the big news story I will be away for. But any putting any money down on who it's going to be between the flip of the coin of Harris or Rice?
Yeah, Susan Rice. That's my money's on Susan Rice. because Biden has a long history with her. So when it comes down to Senator Harris or Susan Rice, I think he's going to go with Susan Rice.
I thought so too. For a while now, I've been saying she's the choice, and we'll see where it goes. There was some time where I had thought maybe Tammy Duckworth would be pulled into it for military reasons, and Val Demings was highly considered. But I think ultimately it's going to come down to who he's worked with in the past and who he's comfortable with. And look, Rice is going to bring a lot of the Obama crowd in too.
I said that today. I was telling a consultant today that asked me what I thought about it, and I said, look, she will bring it. Not that Biden won't have Obama's support, but she's going to bring everybody along. A lot of people are going to say, okay, it's pretty stable from their point of view, and she'll bring that, to the campaign. Now, of course, the conservatives will go crazy because of Benghazi, which had 595 hearings. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but they had a bunch of hearings, and then everybody tried to nail different people beyond Hillary, including Susan Rice. And so, for the conservatives, that'll fire them up a bit. But then again, you've got conservatives out there with the Lincoln Project and everything else going against the president, so that'll kind of wash.
We'll see how this plays out. Any October surprise? You seeing anything? This is a weird election time. I'm not anything you see coming around the corner.
The October surprise is done. Now, here's where I think it will attempt to be. You can't interfere in the Justice Department in the course of an election. That is an actual rule in justice. You can't interfere with an election. I think, though, the Attorney General may take some kind of interference right up to the last week before. I don't think it's going to matter, because I think the October surprise, this was in a story today, but I've been thinking about this, it's gone. A lot of people want to vote in this election, and they're going to vote early as they can because, the postal system, et cetera. So I think that any October surprise is absolutely going to have the least effect in the last 50 years of an October surprise.
Yeah, I think you're right. But and to highlight the fact that you think that people want to vote, my daughter, my wife and my daughter went to Target today, and because they're looking for, my daughter's 11, they're looking for clothes, and she sent me a picture of one of the clothes display racks. The one shirt said "Voting for the Future," and the shirt next to it said "Good things are coming." So it's one of those things where you go. I think the country and even the people who are putting clothes on the shelves at Target are going, can't wait for the election to come. Got to get out and vote, and better things are on the way.
Yeah, and I think people are really going to be conscientious about getting their vote in early, so that way if the Postal Service is slow, they'll have their vote up there. I really think they're going to be. So the October surprise doesn't have the same effect. All
right, good stuff. Bob, as always, I appreciate the time, man.
Thank you, Rick.
Our good friend Bob Ney. Let's take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Waving the flag of freedom for people, not corporations. Rick Smith.
We had, for the first time since 1960, watches and warnings from Florida to Canada.
Hurricane Isaias hits North Carolina amid a pandemic and makes weather history. Rising sea levels pushing storm impacts further inland, study warns. Plus, 15 states clear the air by moving to all-electric trucks and buses.
All of those moves and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
So this is really the worst possible time for a hurricane to happen at the time of an epidemic that is out of control in a state.
Oh, use your imagination, Dr. Amesh Adalja. The worst time for the hurricane will be on Election Day. Bank on it. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, so at the end of our last Green News Report, we were left arguing about whether people should plant those mystery seeds that are coming from China even though the USDA says don't plant them. Well, as it turns out, we now know what those mystery seeds are. The USDA has identified them as being seeds for mustard, cabbage, morning glories, roses, hibiscus, and herbs such as mint, sage, rosemary, and lavender. See? Nothing to worry about.
Well, I would disagree with that. Sometimes things can still be invasive species, and Washington State agriculture scientists said that they also found amaranth, which could harm the nation's soybean crop.
Well, I'm going with the USDA here. What does Washington State know about these things? What do you got for us today, Desi Doyen? We'll argue about it later.
Okay. Hurricane Isaias hit southern North Carolina as a fast Category 1 on Monday night, bringing torrential rains and winds and knocking out power to thousands. As we go to air, the National Hurricane Center forecasts Isaias will travel up the U.S. East Coast. Fueled by unusually warm ocean waters, Isaias is the earliest, 9th named Atlantic storm on record, not normally seen until mid-September. And it's the first time since record-keeping began in 1851 that we've seen 2 Atlantic hurricanes, Hannah and Isaias, form in the last week of July. Officials along the eastern seaboard are now scrambling to arrange evacuation shelters and stage emergency response assets, all during a global pandemic that has already strained state healthcare systems. Those compound impacts worry infectious disease expert Dr. Umesh Adalja of Johns Hopkins University here on MSNBC.
And remember, some of the same resources that we're going to use to take care of coronavirus patients are going to be needed to take care of people that are injured from the hurricane, that are displaced from the hurricane. And you're going to see disruption of healthcare, just like we saw, for example, with Superstorm Sandy several years ago in the New York area. So this is really the worst possible time for a hurricane to happen, at the time of an epidemic that is out of control in a state.
I know they're trying to maintain social distancing in these shelters, but
Yes.
if they get overly crowded, it will be next to impossible. Down in Florida, they were actually sending people out to hotels rather than keeping them in a group shelter.
A very expensive proposition.
Yep.
Extreme weather hits even worse in developing countries. In Bangladesh, one of the world's poorest nations, right now, severe flooding from the most intense seasonal monsoon rains in decades has displaced millions of people. About a third of Bangladesh is affected. Officials say the floods are noteworthy this year, both for their extreme intensity and long duration. Again, all during a pandemic. This is the reason why the Pentagon calls man-made climate change a threat multiplier, because it intensifies other disasters.
Other existing problems get much worse with global warming.
Yep. And a flurry of new studies adds rising sea levels to that list. The first, from the journal Scientific Reports, finds that rising seas are already driving the impacts of powerful coastal storms much, much further inland, and projects that extreme storm surge and high tides will reach much farther inland in coming years, putting tens of millions more people and $14 trillion worth of assets and infrastructure at increased risk of periodic flooding worldwide. The researchers found that low-lying Bangladesh is particularly at risk, along with parts of France, Germany, India, and China. And here in the United States, Virginia and North Carolina are at highest risk.
Well, that's nice to tell them after they've been hit with a hurricane.
Finally, 15 states have announced that they will follow California's push to electrify all trucks and buses, announcing that they've agreed to develop a joint action plan aiming for 30% of all medium and heavy-duty vehicle truck sales to be zero emissions by 2030 and 100% zero emissions by 2050.
Communists.
Air quality experts call it one of the most significant efforts to reduce harmful diesel engine emissions in the United States. And bonus, states that take action now will save money on healthcare costs and lives, thanks to improving air quality.
Well, Donald Trump is not going to be happy about any of that. Maybe he'll write a book about it from jail. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find, follow, and share us planet-wide on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So evidently tomorrow in my hometown of Cleveland, Trump is going to a high-priced fundraiser, and this is one of those really exclusive clubs. I've been there one time. It's really a really very fancy place. It's on the estate that used to be the Hanna estate in Cleveland, which, at one point, Cleveland was home to the most millionaires in the world. Back, years ago, 100 years ago, back when John D. Rockefeller was the richest man in the world, and Cleveland was home to all of the extraction billionaires. All the people who, the robber baron era. This is when they bought up all the waterfront, and they had the rule of the land. They were squarely in charge, and I have a fairly wealthy uncle who lives in that area, who lives in the estate that was the Hanna estate, because he did really well for himself, and he has turned from what was once a fairly moderate Ted Strickland supporting Democrat into a ravaging right-wing, way out on the fringe Trump supporting Republican. And, it's one of those things where I sell this story from Cleveland where, at this Shorby Club where they're going to be tomorrow, Trump's going to show up, and it's like $5,600 just to go to the event. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's a lot of money. But, for the people who live in this area, where he's going to go, $5,600 is, it's a suit, really. It's not a big deal to these people. But then you go, if you want to get your picture taken with them, it's $35,000. And I'm going, there's literally no one that I would pay $35,000 to take a picture with. There's not. I guess I don't hold anyone in that high esteem. And then you read further into the article. It's not bad enough. It's $35,000 to get a picture of Mr. Orange Marmalade. Evidently, they're going to have a round table at the end of it. $100,000 to sit at this round table. So I wrote, to my relative, and I said, hey, I hear you're going to cough up about $142,000 tomorrow. And I haven't gotten a response back. But, it's one of these things where you go, this is what money gets you. It gets you the access. Because I put out on Twitter today, I go, who in their right mind would spend $35,000 to get a picture with someone? I wouldn't spend $35,000. I mean, and this is really truthful. If this is what our politics have come to, I have a problem with it. The money in this whole game is just horrible, and it's one of these moments where, I keep coming back to, we need publicly financed elections. We need to have a level play so actual working people can participate. Do you think the people who are going to sit down at that table after coughing up $142,000 for a picture and sitting at a table, do you think that they have an agenda? Do you think that they're going to go, oh, gee, I just want to sit and I just want to rub elbows with Donald Trump? Do you think they really? No, they've got an agenda, and their agenda is, we want something. We want you to hurry up and pursue this bit of deregulation or this executive order or this regulatory change or this little bit of, nipping around the corners so that they can make their $142,000 back, because these people didn't get rich just throwing money out the window. They didn't get rich giving money away. They didn't. They didn't get rich by going, gee, it seems like a good cause. I'm going to give a bunch of money to it. They don't do that. They do it because there's a return on investment. Be it, stature in the community, be it a tax break, or be it access to a politician. And Trump is the ultimate, access guy. And it's weird, because you go back to the Clinton era. People say, well, he sold the Lincoln bedroom to donors. And he did. And it was wrong. And I'll be the first to admit it. This takes that to a whole nother level. So I get these people who love to compare Slick Willie to Donald Trump. Every time you say, well, Donald Trump said you grab her by the what. Well, Bill Clinton. I go, I'm not a Clinton fan, so it doesn't work on me. It's not kryptonite for me. I didn't like Bill Clinton for all of the same reasons that you don't like him. He was still better, though, than George H.W. Bush. He was still better than Bob Dole. He was still better than the alternatives that we had, which speaks a lot to where we are as a country. So when I look at this, again, it's the little guy gets the shaft. The working person who right now, seriously, is struggling to make ends meet. The person who's worried that they can't pay their rent or their mortgage. The person who's worried that their job's not going to come back. The person who's worried come fall that they have nowhere to put their kids because the schools aren't going to reopen. And when they do reopen, they're going to close almost immediately because we're going to quarantine the hell out of everything because we just haven't handled this right. Because we've bungled the response from the beginning. We've had no leadership from top to bottom. It's all bad. And this is what Republican governance gets us. This is what conservative ideology has brought us to. This is what I just want a small government. This is where this gets us. And I guess the question is, are we surprised? Are we surprised where we are? When this is what they told us. This is their view. The free market should take care of it. And to give you an example, today the Pennsylvania Treasury Office on their official Twitter account, and this again is one of those moments where you go, it's not surprising, but they tweeted out today, the state treasurer here in Pennsylvania, that the drug that we're all hoping for, this Remdesivir, Gilead, I guess, is the company that manufactures it. And we've talked about this before. They've said that a course of treatment for this is, upwards of $3,000, $3,500. The treasurer's office figured out that a vial of this treatment costs $1. $1 to produce. $1. That's it. And they're going to charge upwards of, they said $3,100. I saw a report that said $3,300. But right around there. Let's cut them a break. Say $3,000. Cost them $1. $1. That means $29.99 in pure profit. You go, but Rick, they developed it. They should get some benefit. And I go, okay, yeah, I agree that you made a good product. Let's hope it works. Let's hope it doesn't kill anybody. And I'm hoping this is the cure all. I hope this saves our economy. I hope it's all that. But ultimately, our money went towards the R&D. We spent tons of resource. We handed them billions of dollars. So we not only paid for the research and development, we're going to pay for the profit as well. And look, I get the whole argument that, risk and reward. I get that. But where was the risk? We funded all of this. And I keep coming back to these moments where, at some point, do we wake up and say, enough is enough already? We've got 157,000 people dead at this point. And there might be a cure, but you can't get the cure until you pay the profit. Doesn't that seem obscene? Because, here's the thing. If you think $35,000 for a picture with Trump is obscene, and I do, if you think $100,000 to sit at a table and BS across the table with Trump is obscene, and I do, you can't not think that $3,000 holding a country hostage for $3,000 over a $1 vial of the quote unquote cure is any less vile. And what's interesting, the same people who sit at those tables are the same people pursuing these policies. And it's the politicians who they're sitting at the table with, buying access to, that allow it to happen. That is obscene. No question in my mind. And angering. I mean, this is one of those rage to the street kind of things in my view. I'd love to hear your opinion, though. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Tell me what you think. Is this, am I overreacting? Because I've been told sometimes I get a little overboard on some of this stuff. I'm outraged by this, and I'm usually never outraged. This, a bridge too far. Anyway, if you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast. The Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk. Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now,